October 12th, 2012, Highland Heights Police Station, Kentucky. A 21-year-old woman sits in an interrogation room, her mascara smudged, her short dress and heels still pristine, despite what she claims was a violent struggle for her life just hours ago. Her name is Shayna Hubers, and she has just shot her boyfriend 6 times. But it's not what she did that will shock the world. It's what she's about to say and do in this room over the next several hours that will reveal something so disturbing, so completely devoid of humanity, that prosecutors will use it to send her to prison for life. Detective Dave Fornash has just finished reading her Miranda rights. Shayna initially asked for an attorney, but then, in a decision that will haunt her forever, she waives that right and agrees to talk. For over 3 hours, she will speak, and speak, and speak. She will cry on command, turning tears on and off like a light switch. She will laugh about future marriage prospects. She will ask bizarre questions about jail showers and whether she can keep her phone behind bars. She will ramble about college papers due on Monday, about smoking cigarettes, about orthodontia. But most chillingly of all, she will make a joke about her dead boyfriend that is so callous, so grotesque, that everyone who hears it will know immediately that they are not dealing with a victim of domestic violence who acted in self-defense. They are dealing with something else entirely. "I shot him right here," Shayna says to the detective, pointing directly at her own nose. And then she says it, the words that will define her forever, the words that will be played in courtrooms, broadcast on news channels, analyzed by psychologists and true crime enthusiasts for years to come.
Wants to get a nose job, just that kind of person. And I shot him right here. I gave him his nose job.
Let me say that again so the full weight of it lands. Shayna Hubers just killed her boyfriend of 18 months. She shot him once in the face while he was seated at his dining room table. Then, as he lay on the floor dying, twitching, and making what she called funny noises, she shot him 5 more times in the side, the back, the armpit. She pumped bullets into his helpless body as he bled out on his own floor. And now, mere hours later, she is sitting in a police station, making jokes about giving him a nose job. Because Ryan Poston, the 28-year-old attorney she just murdered, had once mentioned in casual conversation that he was considering getting rhinoplasty. And Shayna remembered that detail. And Shayna thought in this moment that it would be funny to reference it. But the horror show is only beginning, because as the interrogation continues, as Detective Fornash tries to piece together what actually happened in that condominium, Shayna's behavior becomes increasingly bizarre, increasingly detached from the reality of what she's done. At one point, she actually laughs, a genuine laugh, and says,
"I don't know if anyone will ever want to marry me if they know that I killed my boyfriend in self-defense." It's not funny, but...
She pauses, seems to realize how that sounds, and adds, "Not funny," but she was laughing. She was actually laughing about whether her murdered boyfriend might hurt her future dating prospects. Then come the questions about jail, not questions about what's going to happen to her legally, not questions about lawyers or charges or trials. No, Shayna wants to know about the practical realities of incarceration. "If you go to jail, are you allowed to keep your phone?" she asks earnestly, as if she's asking about hotel amenities. "Can you shower there? Or do you just get really dirty?" When informed that yes, there are showers, but they're communal, her response is a horrified, "I have to shower in front of people?" This woman just committed murder, and she's worried about shower privacy. She complains about her college workload. "I have 2 papers due Monday that I haven't..." And then she trails off, seeming to realize that her academic deadlines are no longer relevant. Doesn't matter now. She talks about being a good Christian, about how murder is a sin in her faith. She insists over and over that it was self-defense, that Ryan was abusive, that he beat her and reached for the gun first. But her demeanor betrays her words. There's no genuine fear in her voice. There's no trauma. There's no shock. There's performance. There's calculation. There's a woman who is trying very, very hard to appear like a victim, but can't quite pull it off because the mask keeps slipping. And then comes the moment that will seal her fate forever. After hours of questioning, the detectives leave Shayna alone in the interrogation room. They tell her they need to step out for a while. What they don't tell her is that the camera is still rolling, the video is still recording, and what Shayna Hubers does when she thinks no one is watching will prove, beyond any shadow of doubt, exactly who she really is. She stands up from her chair. She begins to pace around the small room. And then, incredibly, impossibly, she starts to dance. Not nervous fidgeting, not anxious pacing. Dancing, actual dancing. She pirouettes, she twirls, she snaps her fingers. She moves with a lightness and energy, a joy that seems completely incomprehensible for someone who just took another human life. And then she starts to sing. Amazing Grace, the beloved Christian hymn, floats out of her mouth as she spins around the interrogation room like she's auditioning for a musical.
How sweet the sound.
But it's what she says between the dancing and the singing that reveals the truth. When she thinks she's alone, when she believes no one can hear her, Shayna Hubers speaks to herself, and her words are a confession more damning than anything the police could extract from her. "I did it," she says aloud to the empty room.
I did. Yeah, I did.
She pauses, almost marveling at herself. "I'm so good at acting." And then as she twirls again, the words come out almost sing-song. "I killed him. I killed him." This is not a woman in shock. This is not a victim of abuse processing trauma. This is not someone who reluctantly took a life to save her own. This is a woman who is pleased with herself. This is a woman who knows exactly what she did and feels no remorse whatsoever. This is a woman who, in her own words, is acting, playing a role, performing victimhood for the cameras while her true self, the self that dances and twirls and brags about her acting skills, exists underneath. Now, to understand how we got to this moment, to understand how a 21-year-old psychology student became a cold-blooded killer who jokes about nose jobs and dances in interrogation rooms, we need to go back. Back to the spring of 2011, when Shayna Michelle Hubers first laid eyes on Ryan Carter Poston's Facebook profile and decided that he was going to be hers. What she didn't know then, what Ryan didn't know then, was that this digital meeting would set in motion a chain of events that would end with 6 bullets, a blood-soaked dining room floor, and one of the most disturbing interrogations in criminal justice history. Ryan Poston was by all accounts a good guy, a sweet guy, the kind of guy who never raised his voice, who avoided confrontation, who his friends and family described as nerdy in the most endearing way possible. At 28 years old, he was an attorney living in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, building his career, enjoying his independence in his Highland Heights condominium. When he saw Shayna Hubers' provocative photos on Facebook in the spring of 2011, he was attracted to her. She was 19, a college student studying psychology at Northern Kentucky University. She was beautiful. She seemed fun. He reached out. She responded. And just like that, Ryan Poston made the worst decision of his life. Because what Ryan didn't realize, what he couldn't have known from a few Facebook photos and flirty messages, was that Shayna Hubers was not just interested in him, she was obsessed with him. From the very beginning of their relationship, Shayna exhibited a level of possessiveness that would have sent most people running for the hills. She sent him 50 to 100 text messages every single day. Not over the course of their entire relationship. Every single day. Some estimates put the total number of texts she sent him over their 18 months together in the hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands of messages bombarding Ryan's phone with pleas, accusations, declarations of love, demands for attention, questions about where he was and who he was with, and why he wasn't responding fast enough. Ryan tried to break up with her multiple times. He would end things, tell her it wasn't working, explain that her intensity was too much for him. And Shayna would simply refuse to accept it. She would show up at his condo unannounced. She would let herself in. She had somehow copied a key without his permission. She would stay overnight even when he begged her to leave. She would cry and scream and wear him down emotionally until he was too exhausted to keep fighting. Ryan confided in his friends about her behavior, describing her in one text message as the craziest person I have ever met. He told a friend it was restraining order level crazy. But Ryan, sweet and non-confrontational Ryan, never filed that restraining order. He kept trying to handle it himself. He kept trying to let her down easy. He kept trying to be kind. And his kindness would cost him everything. Shayna later claimed that Ryan was the abusive one. She painted a picture of emotional manipulation, of a man who constantly criticized her appearance, who told her she needed a boob job or a facelift or to lose weight.
He would pick on me and belittle me and bully me in front of strangers. And it could be for something as small as how I was eating my food. And it would just feel very humiliating and degrading.
She claimed he pointed guns at her as jokes during their relationship, playfully threatening her in ways that terrified her. She said she stayed with him despite the abuse because she loved him, because she did favors for him, like picking up his laundry and buying him food, because she was trying to be a good girlfriend. But Ryan's friends and family tell a completely different story. They describe a man who was gentle, kind, who never showed aggression or anger. They describe a woman who was manipulative, dramatic, who couldn't accept that the relationship was over. The text messages tell their own story. In one message to a friend, Shayna wrote, "He says he is only with me because I make him feel so awful when I cry." Another message revealed her true feelings. "My love has turned to hate." But perhaps the most chilling messages came on October 12th, 2012, the day she would kill him. That morning, Shayna was at a shopping mall when she told a store clerk something that should have been taken as a serious threat, but was probably dismissed as dramatic exaggeration. She said she was going to kill her boyfriend, just said it out loud to a stranger as if she were commenting on the weather. Later that day, Shayna went to a gun range with Ryan. While they were there, while she was literally holding a firearm and standing next to the man she claimed to love, she sent a text message to a friend. The message read, "When I go to the shooting range with Ryan tonight, I want to turn around and shoot and kill him and play like it's an accident." Let me repeat that. Hours before she murdered Ryan Poston, Shayna Hubers texted someone about her desire to shoot him and make it look like an accident. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a woman who snapped in a moment of fear. This was premeditated murder, and she told someone about it before she did it. By October of 2012, Ryan had finally, definitively decided that he was done with Shayna Hubers forever. He had started talking to someone new, a woman named Audrey Bolt, who happened to be Miss Ohio USA 2012. They had met on Facebook, just like he and Shayna had. But this time things felt different, healthier, normal. Ryan was excited about his date with Audrey, scheduled for 9:30 p.m. on October 12th at a bar in Milford, Ohio. The night before, on October 11th, Ryan confided in his stepfather, Peter Carter, about his plans. But he also expressed fear about telling Shayna. "She won't take no for an answer," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of 18 months of trying and failing to extract himself from her grip. Despite having broken up with her again, Shayna slept over at his condo that night. Even at the very end, Ryan couldn't get her to leave. On the day of the murder, October 12th, Ryan told Shayna clearly that he would not be seeing her that weekend. He had plans. He had a date. He was moving on. For Ryan, this was freedom. This was finally, after months of suffocating obsession and endless text messages and unwanted visits, the beginning of his new life. For Shayna, this was unacceptable. This was rejection in its most concrete form. Ryan Poston was choosing someone else over her. Ryan Poston was going on a date with Miss Ohio USA while relegating Shayna to the past. And Shayna Hubers was not going to let that happen. Sometime after 9 p.m., when Ryan should have already been on his way to meet Audrey at the bar, Shayna arrived at his condominium. She was wearing a short dress and heels. She let herself in with that copied key. And what happened next, according to Shayna's own account, was an argument. Ryan demanded she leave. She refused. And then Shayna claims Ryan became violent. She says he beat her, that he tried to physically carry her out by her arms and legs, that he reached for his .40 caliber handgun, which he habitually kept on a table in the living room after cleaning it. But here's where Shayna's story starts to fall apart. She claims she grabbed the gun first during this violent struggle. She says she wrestled it away from him, released the safety, and fired in self-defense as he advanced on her. One shot to the head while he was seated or leaning over the dining room table, and then, as he lay on the floor dying, as he twitched and made what she described as funny noises, she shot him 5 more times. In the side, in the back, in the armpit. She kept pulling that trigger until she had emptied 6 bullets into Ryan Poston's body, and then she waited 10 to 15 minutes before calling 911. When police arrived at Ryan Poston's condominium that night, the scene they found told a very different story than the one Shayna Hubers was telling. The apartment was orderly. There was no overturned furniture. There were no signs of a prolonged, violent struggle between 2 people fighting for control of a gun. The blood was concentrated around Ryan's body on the dining room floor. There was no blood on the front of his shirt, which suggested he was not standing upright, not advancing on anyone, when that first bullet struck him in the face. The gun lay nearby, exactly where it would be if someone had simply picked it up off the table and started shooting. Neighbors reported hearing the gunshots, 6 distinct pops echoing through the quiet building around 10 p.m. But nobody reported hearing yelling. Nobody heard fighting. Nobody heard the sounds of a violent domestic dispute escalating into a life-or-death struggle. They just heard gunshots, quick succession, and then silence. Shayna had light bruising on her arms, which she claimed came from Ryan's assault. But forensic experts would later suggest that the bruising was consistent with self-infliction, that she could have caused those marks herself to support her story. Ryan Carter Poston, 28 years old attorney, described by everyone who knew him as sweet and kind and non-confrontational, was dead. His massive Christian burial was held on October 15, 2012, just 3 days after Shayna Hubers shot him 6 times in his own home. His family and friends gathered at Blessed Sacrament Church in Fort Mitchell to mourn a life cut impossibly short. He was buried in St. John's Cemetery. And the woman who killed him was sitting in a jail cell, held on $3 million bond, waiting for her day in court. Prosecutors built their case methodically. They had the obsessive text messages, hundreds of thousands of them showing Shayna's possessiveness and Ryan's repeated attempts to end the relationship. They had witness testimony from the mall clerk who heard Shayna say she was going to kill her boyfriend. They had the gun range text message where Shayna literally described her plan to shoot Ryan and make it look like an accident. They had the 911 call where Shayna described shooting Ryan multiple times while he twitched on the floor. They had the interrogation tape with the nose job joke and the bizarre questions about jail showers. And they had the video of Shayna dancing and singing and confessing when she thought no one was watching. But most damning of all, they had testimony from Shayna's former cellmate, a woman named Cecily Miller. Miller told the jury that while they shared a cell, Shayna bragged about the killing. She laughed about giving Ryan his nose job. She talked about plotting her defense, about whether to go with an insanity defense or a battered woman defense. She mentioned her high IQ, suggesting she was smart enough to manipulate the system. This wasn't a woman racked with guilt over taking a life in self-defense. This was a woman proud of what she'd done and confident she could talk her way out of it. The defense tried to paint Shayna as a victim of domestic violence, a young woman who had suffered emotional and psychological abuse at Ryan's hands. They emphasized her youth. She was only 21 when she killed him. They later introduced evidence of borderline personality disorder, claiming she suffered from PTSD due to Ryan's treatment of her. In the second trial, Shayna herself took the stand and described their sexual relationship in lurid detail, painting Ryan as manipulative and cruel. But the jury didn't buy it. Not in the first trial in April 2015, and not in the second trial in August 2018 after the first conviction was overturned due to a juror being a convicted felon. Both times the jury deliberated for about 5 hours. Both times they came back with the same verdict: guilty of murder. The evidence was simply too overwhelming. The premeditation was too clear. The lack of remorse was too obvious. Shayna Hubers was not a victim who killed in self-defense. She was an obsessed girlfriend who couldn't accept rejection and decided that if she couldn't have Ryan Poston, nobody could. The final sentencing hearing took place on October 18, 2018 in Campbell Circuit Court before Judge Daniel Zala. By then, Shayna was 27 years old and had spent 6 years in jail awaiting and undergoing trials. The jury recommended life imprisonment. The defense begged for a minimum sentence of 20 years. arguing that Shayna was young, mentally ill, and capable of rehabilitation. Her attorney, David Eldridge, called her interrogation the ramblings of a mentally ill young girl and pointed to her jail marriage to a transgender inmate named Unique Taylor as evidence that she had changed, that she was capable of healthy relationships now. That marriage lasted less than a year. They divorced in March 2019. Prosecutor Michelle Snodgrass stood before the judge and spoke for the Poston family. She emphasized Shayna's complete lack of genuine remorse. Yes, Shayna had written a typed apology letter to the judge. But after her conviction, she was caught on recorded jail calls mocking Ryan's sister, calling her teddy bear girl for faking tears during her victim impact statement. 6 years after shooting Ryan Poston 6 times, Shayna Hubers still showed no empathy, no understanding of the pain she had caused, no real recognition that she had done anything wrong. Ryan's father, Jay Poston, delivered a victim impact statement that cut to the heart of the tragedy. Evil, for reasons only evil knows, took it upon herself to take from us that which she could never possess. He urged the judge to impose the maximum sentence, to delay Shayna's release for as long as legally possible. Ryan's mother, Lisa Carter, sat through the hearing with the strength that only a grieving parent can muster. After the sentencing, she hugged supporters and said quietly, "It's never over. Because for the Poston family, it never will be over. Ryan will always be gone. The future he should have had, the cases he should have tried, the family he might have built, all of it was stolen on October 12, 2012. Judge Daniel Zala looked at Shayna Hubers and delivered his sentence. "You picked up a gun off a table and shot your boyfriend 6 times, he said, his voice firm and clear. Your actions that evening were grossly violent and intentionally calculated to cause his death." He saw no reason to deviate from the jury's recommendation. Life imprisonment with parole eligibility after 20 years. That means Shayna Hubers, if she serves the minimum, will be eligible for parole around 2032, accounting for time served. She will be in her early 40s. She showed no emotion as she was led away from the courtroom to begin serving her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institution for Women in Pewee Valley. In 2020, the Kentucky Supreme Court upheld the conviction in Hubers versus Commonwealth, definitively rejecting her self-defense claims. Shayna's mother has maintained her daughter's innocence, testifying to her good character throughout the legal proceedings. But Ryan Poston's family knows the truth. They know they lost a bright, kind son who adored his sisters and never raised his voice in anger. They know he died at the hands of a woman who couldn't accept that he didn't love her anymore. They know that somewhere in a Kentucky prison, Shayna Hubers lives on while Ryan remains forever 28, forever buried in St. John's Cemetery, forever the victim of an obsession that turned deadly. And somewhere in the archives of the Highland Heights Police Department, that interrogation video still exists. The dancing, the singing, the confession to an empty room. "I'm so good at acting," Shayna said that night, spinning and twirling and marveling at her own performance. But she wasn't good enough. The mask slipped. The truth came out. And justice, delayed by years of trials and appeals, was finally served.